Hey everyone. So we're going to get a bit spicy today. We're going to talk about sacred sexuality, what it is, how it can help you along your journey. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to kind of help not only set your space, but prepare you and any other individual in order to get to that space. If you've never seen my face before, hi, I'm Elizabeth Blackwell from Blissful Home and Body. And I specialize in setting sacred spaces and helping you along your journey to your highest and greatest self. So let's get started. So before I get too deep into the subject, no pun intended, I want to talk about how we as a society seem to have two very extreme views of sex and sexuality overall. On one side, it's the idea that sex is somehow dark or dirty or should be hidden or somehow shameful and should only be practiced within the confines of a lifelong marriage. But then on the other side, it's this idea that it's no big deal. It's just a physical thing, that it is something that should be paraded or put on display for everyone, and that you should do it with anybody who winks at you just right. And neither one of these really give the weight or importance to that sexual side to us. So when we get into the topic of sacred sexuality, especially, we want to approach it with balance and have an understanding that it is serving not just a physical side, but also a deeply emotional and spiritual side to us as well. So what is sacred sexuality? Well, at its core, it is the understanding of sexual energy and its flow. And before I get too far into this, I do want to point out that the practicing of this can be either a partner or a solo experience. But when you understand sexual energy as a creation energy, it is one of the most powerful that we can work with. Sexual energy is the only energy that is powerful enough to spark life. But most of the time in our practice, that is not what we're trying to achieve. But we can use this creation energy to create so much in our lives. We can use it to create healing or manifestation or a connection. But sacred sexuality is where sexuality comes together with spirituality. It is both an expression and an experience. And when practiced properly, it's a hell of an experience. So there's a couple of things that I want you to be mindful of when you get into the idea of sacred sexuality overall. First of all, it is a holistic approach to sex and sexuality. It is where that body, clearly, the mind, and the spirit come together in sexual practice. That we need to be aware of where our emotions are going into this. How are we feeling physically? And then to get in touch with that spiritual side to ourselves, whether we are alone or practicing with a partner. Second thing that I want you to be aware of and have a knowledge base of is the idea of masculine and feminine energy. And again, this has nothing to do with biological gender. But the masculine energy is going to be that more, I want to be careful about using certain words, that more dominant, the giving, the aggressive, it's logic based. but it is that stronger, more giving side of things. Whereas the feminine energy is the receiving. Again, submissive, but don't read too much into those words, side of things. It's the intuitive and empathetic side of things. And regardless of the gender of the individuals involved here, both sides need to be aware of that internal energy, because within a good practice, both parties will need to both give and receive, be both dominant and submissive. We'll have to have that more aggressive and the softer side of things. That's how we achieve that energy flow. So the two things that need to be present during any spiritual practice, which I've said over and over again, is mindfulness and intention. As far as the mindfulness side go, you just need to be aware of that holistic approach, that body, the mind, and the spirit. That where is your body and how are you feeling internally as you head into the practice? And then where are your thoughts? And then to bring your spirit into it, to have that connection. And I usually suggest just some deep breathing and just a moment of internal connection before you get started. But you want to have all three there and present with you. Then you have the intention. And this can be either an individual intention, or it can be a couple's intention. I don't want to go too far into the side of when it's a solo practice and what you can do with that creation energy, because I think that deserves a video all into its own when you're bringing about manifestation and things along those lines. But you do want to be aware of what your intention is. If you are still a little bit further back in the practice and you haven't quite gotten to those spoken spaces yet with your partner, then most of the time the intention is going to be for connection. That is what you are creating with this sexual energy. The other intention that you want to have when working with this energy is for that unity and oneness, that coming together. And there's so much more to go into when it comes to sacred sexuality, but I don't want this video to be too terribly long. So I want to give you some tips and tricks in order to set up this sacred space and connection. First and foremost, you need to be in a self-loving place before you can go into a connected, loving place. You want to be good with where you are and generally where you're sitting as far as along your journey before you try to delve too deep into that sacred sexuality. So you want to be generally, this is always a practice, at peace with yourself before you head into this connection. And when it comes to getting to this space with a partner, you want to be clearly comfortable with the person. There needs to be some things there like trust and boundaries. You want to be with an individual that you feel open with to have this connection. And so when it comes to setting up a space for this, some things that I usually suggest. Again, this is a practice of the body, the mind, and the spirit. So when it comes to your physical surroundings, you want it to be an open and comfortable place. You want to have things set up. And I think a lot of people do this kind of unintentionally, without even knowing. But sensory-wise, you want it to be a place that you can truly connect with an individual, a warm place that you can feel open and free in. You want to do things like softer lights. I'm a big proponent of candlelight because I create intention candles, but that softer things that are easier to take in, things like other things in your surroundings. You just want to be aware of soft spaces, like I said before, a warm place where you can connect with an individual. Nothing, remove everything from a space when you're trying to connect that would be distracting or have a negative effect. You don't want to look up and connect with a photo of your grandmother that you didn't really like. Remove those things from the space. That is going to take away from this experience. Think about things. Think about all five senses. Again, with your eyes, as far as softer lighting and items on your body that you feel comfortable with. Think of the way the room smells. I know that somewhat sounds silly, but it's really not. Aromatherapy, diffuse essential oils, or have candles going, things along those lines. What are you hearing? Is there a screaming baby in the background, or is there soft or more sensual music? This is a sensual experience. So all of those things that your senses are going to be aware of, you should be aware of before you head into this practice. And then when it comes to connecting with an individual, you want to share this with an individual that you can be open with. It is absolutely best if you can talk about things before heading into the practice. Things like, what are your intentions? But you want to be able to have that emotional freedom for that give and the take. Just some other suggestions that I would have when heading into this practice, especially with a partner, would be that open communication, clearly. You want to be in a space of vulnerability because that is what it takes in order to get into that receptive side of things. So you want to be with an individual that you can be in that vulnerable space with. But if you can do things like breath synchronization, where you're breathing together and have that heart-to-heart connection, that will serve to very much deepen how you interact with each other. And you want to have an aura of trust and connectedness. And again, I don't want to make this video too terribly long, so I will probably do a more in-depth part 2 to it. But these are just kind of the basics of how to kind of dip your toes in the water of that sacred sexuality. So I hope this video helped you out as just again, very beginner's guide to sacred sexuality and that understanding of what it is. I will definitely be doing a follow-up. We'll get a little bit more in depth. But if it did, I would absolutely love it if you would hit that like button or even possibly subscribe, because it really does help out small channels like this. And to wrap up, I just hope you all stay well, my friends.